Hey everyone, it's Brian of the Chronicler's Tale. Jumping right in. Uh, if you have, I right before this video, I published the part one, which was sort of an off-the-cuff, unplanned thing. Originally, when I was recording that, I was like, okay, I need a reminder. These are the thoughts in my head. They're fresh. I'll get them out, and then it just turned into, oh, to hell with it. I'll just get all my thoughts out and leave it at that. Here they are. And if you haven't watched it, there'll be a link in the description. And also, if you're on YouTube, I'll have a banner that you can click on. What I went into, let's bring up the page. I was reading an entry by James Howard Kunstler. If you haven't read him, he's very much taken a look at Western civilization, its methodologies, its ways, and been critical of a lot of the things, a lot of distortions and how it's manifested, such as trying to maintain the cheap fuel-driven suburban lifestyle of sprawl, everything that's associated with it. He's written numerous books, but on this article, Back to School, he points out, which it just seemed to crystallize a lot of things, where he's talking about the fourth turning, which, if you haven't, it's the Neil Howe and I forget the other author's name. Well, I talk about every 80 years, there's a cycle that happens where institutions built in a period of chaos eventually reach a breakdown point because society has changed so much that they know that, and humans being humans, where you create institutions that slow things down and create structure, eventually you get grifting, dishonesty, pilfering, plundering, and that it contributes to, at the end of each cycle, a breakdown of these institutional systems that no longer are capable of maintaining and following their original mission statement, and they break down. Excuse me. And in this article, there's write-up of his, he points out many factors that I've picked up from different sources, such as IMF bailouts for France. Well, heck, there was talk of an IMF bailout for Britain, which is nuts. The International Monetary Fund, that's partially funded by Britain and France. And the whole idea is extending a loan to the government. These governments, usually it'd be smaller countries, to use an old Cold War term, a third world nation. And I think today the term would be an underdeveloped nation that doesn't have a lot of natural resources, natural resource wealth, or something else to draw off of, or it's just badly managed, and they're able to get an IMF loan. And usually an IMF loan comes with a lot of strings attached and ends up causing more harm than good, because the IMF loan becomes a tool for the countries that fund it to turn the nation receiving the loan essentially towards a path of servitude. I know one example that I've heard cited a lot is I don't think it was Thailand, but there was a nation where one of the stipulations was you're going to build, to pay off this loan, you need to start building shrimp farms to create an export market and generate revenue to pay off this loan. Well, the effect of that was it altered water habitats so drastically that it had seriously detrimental effects. It killed a lot of the native industry. It had people who were in other areas of economic activity and jobs going to do this, destroying and eroding those industries that they were involved in, which caused further dependence and created a cycle of, well, now we have to get we need even more money because we have to import all these things because we're not making them ourselves anymore. And yeah, the IMF is it's a tool for economic subjugation, to use, harsher terms, but essentially it's what it does. If you get an IMF loan, you're up the creek without a paddle. Well, seeing indicators like this, or that it's and with news of especially Europe, who has a very deep and structurally dependent, a very dependent social network, social net that relies on tax dollars. And they're strained to the max now because it was pushed to the edge by bringing in people, not through normal immigration methods, but by special status of they are refugees, they are migrants, they're leaving war, fleeing war-torn areas, humanitarian assistance, humanitarian I know with Britain, I want to say it's like some sort of classifies like humanitarian laws or something like that. And it's absolutely, and you've had a result where just economically, it's no longer affordable in a lot of these nations. A lot of green policies where people with good intent, hey, we don't want as much pollution. We don't want to create as much of an impact on the natural environment. But the problem is that there was poor planning. And so now a lot of industries that require a lot of energy are getting screwed because they said, well, we're going to close the coal, but we're also going to shut down the nuclear because nuclear bad. And it's just stupid policy where it's ideologically driven and not driven by pragmatism. Well, pragmatism is making a hard comeback because it has to. And that's what's going on in a lot of places. And that's also in Germany, that's exacerbated the situation where a lot of heavy industries, due to regulation, due to having a lack of accessibility of energy sources, they have to leave their home country and set up operations somewhere else. That's nuts. That's nuts. But it's happening. And I didn't realize this, but Germany's been playing the Japanese stagnation game for 3 years, where it's sort of, yeah, we're dipping to the downside here, and we're trying to stay above water, and that's nuts. Because Germany, for years especially after the creation of the Eurozones or the European Union, was they were able to be the powerhouse of Europe and the Eurozone because of their export abilities. Well, not anymore. And seeing all of these things happening and reaching and seeing things like in the United States as of right now, recorded unemployed people were greater in number by, I don't know, double digit, by like 25,000 than job listings. We've got a lot of different kinds of loans that can't be repaid here. Is there anything else to scroll down here? Yeah, standards of living, energy. I think I've touched on everything here. I have. Good. Let's go back to main screen. Boom. We've got government finances that are stressed, national governments. We've got state governments. We're very much at a point where humanity is going through some big changes, and we're reorganizing ourselves and how we interact with one another. Part of that is going to be changes to the monetary system and systems, the currency, our money. That's where Bitcoin, as far as a fixed supply asset and an asset that grows, that's depreciating in value? No, that appreciates in value, meaning it has a depreciative effect, meaning holding on to one unit of that digital currency, by holding on to it, you've been having the benefit for the last 13 years of an increase of purchasing power, meaning prices priced in that currency have decreased versus the other way around, which is your currency decreases in value. So it takes more and more of them to buy the exact same things. And the point I kind of brought up in the part one was, for years now, there's always been talk about the big one, the big decline, the things wherever Western civilization, everything from the monetary system, the Bretton Woods Agreement, everything for years and years are finally coming to a head. And we're going to have the big one, the big Great Depression, the one that's going to just cause chaos and misery and hardship and, everything under the globe, every possible scenario. I don't think it's going to be as bad as that, but I think it's going to be worse in some ways. There's going to be pain. There's going to be disruption. There's going to be confusion. There's going to be a lot of uncertainty. But I think we're going to start becoming more interdependent again on one another, where, what did I mention in the video? There's 7 different kinds of capital. There's financial, there's knowledge, there's experience capital. I know how to do things, and therefore I can generate value from that. There's relationship capital. I think a lot of these things are going to be growing, where the financial is starting to reduce, the other ones come into play. Where when there's I hear stories, I'm in the United States. We haven't had hardship like a lot of countries, like in Argentina or Venezuela or in Africa or anywhere in the Middle East or Eastern Europe or wherever it might be, war-torn countries where people are forced to improvise and really scratch and pull together to help one another, where the human spirit really blossoms because it needs to, because it's about pragmatism and survival. And I think we're going to see more of that just everywhere. And we're going to go, I'm trying to remember who said it. Ooh, it's 2025. This might have been 2019, where someone, maybe 20 or 21. It was, I think, someone that I had read or followed regularly who said the next 10 years are going to, our lives will be more fundamentally changed over the next 10 years than it was in the previous 20, 30, 50, something like that. I mean, even if you just look under better circumstances, how much the last 10 years going from 2025 to 2015 is fundamentally different from 2015 to 2005. I just think of things like how we consume content, where we get our news from, how we interact with one another, the accessibility of information, how we use information, and how all this affects the human condition. And to think that, I think it was in like 20 or 21, to think that the next 5 years are going to get even crazier than the last 5 blows my mind. Blows my mind. It could be something we could be worried about, but at the same time too, it's going to happen. And as someone had said, don't be afraid of the unknown, because when you venture into the unknown, you're going to find the parts of yourself that you've not discovered yet. So just go into the unknown and do what you would do when you face those circumstances when you do. So, yeah, I'm going to wrap this up. Watch part 1. You'll get the overview. Get part 2. You get the much prettier presentation in studio. And yeah, I'm sure I'm going to have more commentary about what's going on, because this is fun and I enjoy it. And I hope you get something from it too. That's partly why I do it, because As a guy who also has a YouTube channel, different content, but a channel, said, you know, he had told me, I came across your videos. I like your point of view on things. It'd be cool if he made more content. And I said, well, and I said to him, I don't, for me, there's no point in making content when there's 10 other people who've made a video about the exact same thing. If the information, from my perspective, the information's already out there, what contribution is it going to make if I do it too? It's just retreading a tire in my eyes. But he said, but it's coming from your point of view, and the way you see things is completely different than those other 10 people, which is true. That all said, it got me back into recording stuff and bringing my thoughts here. And it's with that thought that's like, okay, if I can bring up points or something relevant or something that helps someone to see things differently, or just get their gears turning, or planting a seed to think about stuff, then that's good. Plus, I enjoy this. It's within my nature to chronicle events, and hence Chronicler's Tale. While I'm here, we're looking at current events. These are very, very interesting times that when we are older, people will be asking us to tell stories about it. The same way when I was younger, we'd ask people, who lived through the Great Depression, what was it like? Or people who lived through World War II, what was it like? Because the experience, it's a unique, once in a lifetime type of experience that no one else, once it's passed, it's done. If you didn't live through it, you don't know it. Same thing for now. So closing up, touching on part 1, if you have not built your financial arc, get started. If you haven't planted, best time to plant a tree is 15 years ago. Second best time is today. Having something, anything, is better than nothing. And then if you've already got your arc, keep working on it. Probably come in handy with all the chaos going on. If you don't know what I mean by financial arc, just think about hard assets. And look at part 1, because I touch on that in there. It was only like 7 or 8 minutes. So go watch part 1. Watch part 1. Watch part 1. Follow Chronicler's Tale and all the social media sites listed in the show notes. And with that, I will say, be well, everyone. Talk to you soon. Boom.